My name is Marjorie, and I'm 72 years old, and I never thought my own granddaughter would make me feel small over something as simple as my handwriting. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon, the kind where sunlight streams lazily through lace curtains, turning the air gold. I sat at my kitchen table, my favorite pen in hand, trying to write out a birthday card for my granddaughter, Sophia. The words were clear in my heart, but my hand refused to cooperate. Every stroke trembled slightly, each letter leaning awkwardly to one side. My once beautiful cursive, something my teachers used to praise, now looked like the scrawl of a stranger. I sighed and held the card at arm's length, tilting my head to the side. Maybe it wasn't that bad, I thought. Maybe Sophia would focus more on what I wrote than how it looked. I had written, "Happy birthday to my sweet girl, with all the love in the world." I even added a tiny doodle of a heart beside my name, something I'd done since she was little. When she came over later that day, I handed her the envelope with a small smile. She tore it open right there in the kitchen, her manicured nails slicing through the paper. Her eyes darted across the page, and then she giggled. "Grandma," she said, smirking, "this looks like chicken scratches." Her laughter filled the room, sharp and echoing. My daughter-in-law, standing by the counter, gave her a quick look, half embarrassment, half amusement, but said nothing. Sophia held the card up to her phone and took a picture. "I have to show this to my friends," she said between laughs. "They won't believe this is real." I felt something inside me tighten, like a rubber band pulled too far. I tried to laugh along, but the sound came out brittle. "Oh well," I murmured. "These old hands aren't as steady as they used to be." Sophia shrugged, sliding the card into her purse without even a thank you. "You should just text next time, Grandma. Nobody writes anymore." Her words stayed with me long after she left. When the house fell silent again, I sat back down at the table and stared at the indentations my pen had left on the paper beneath. They looked like tiny scars. I ran my fingers over them, feeling the uneven grooves. In that quiet, I began to remember another version of myself, young Marjorie, the woman who used to write letters that people kept folded in drawers for years. My husband, Henry, used to say my handwriting was like a melody, each loop and curve dancing with rhythm. He loved receiving my letters when he worked away from home. I still kept them all, bundled in a ribbon, tucked safely in a wooden box beneath my bed. That night, I went to my room and opened that box. The scent of old paper and faint lavender rose to meet me. I unfolded one of the letters, Henry's favorite, the one I wrote him the summer before we married. The ink had faded, but the script was still elegant, deliberate. It looked alive. I traced the lines with my fingertip, tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't just handwriting, it was identity. It was love, effort, care. It was me. The next morning, when I came to the kitchen, I could still hear Sophia's laugh echoing in my mind. It wasn't just the insult that hurt, it was what it meant. To her, I was outdated, irrelevant, something to be pitied or mocked. She didn't see me as a woman who had lived, loved, worked, and built a home with her own two hands. She saw me as fragile, slow, inconvenient. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down by the window, watching the world outside. A couple of children rode their bikes down the street, their laughter light and free. I thought about the way handwriting had always been the thread of my life letters, recipes, diary entries, even the grocery lists I used to tape to the fridge. Each stroke of ink was a record of who I was. And now my own granddaughter had laughed at that. Something inside me began to shift, not anger, exactly, but a deep, quiet determination, the kind that starts small and grows roots. I realized I didn't have to accept this version of myself that others saw. Maybe I couldn't bring back the past, but I could make sure my story didn't end with humiliation. After all, if there's one thing you learn by 72, it's that people only see what you let them see. That night, I sat down at my table again with a blank sheet of paper. My hand shook. Yes, but this time I didn't rush. I took my time with every letter, letting the ink flow slowly, patiently. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And with every stroke, I felt the sting of her laughter soften, replaced by something steadier. When I finished, I looked at what I had written. It wasn't a letter, not really just a note to myself, a promise. It said, "One day, she'll understand the power of this pen." I folded the paper neatly, slipped it into the same wooden box that held Henry's letters, and locked it away. Then I turned off the lamp, my heart oddly calm. That night, I decide something inside me has to change. And I'm going to make sure my granddaughter learns a lesson she'll never forget. The next morning, I walk through my house, touching the things that have made up my entire life. The sunlight filters through the curtains, illuminating dust motes that float lazily in the air, like tiny reminders of time itself. I move slowly from room to room, my fingers brushing over familiar objects, the framed wedding photo in the hallway, the chipped vase Henry bought from a flea market in 1972, the old clock that still ticks despite losing its chime decades ago. Each piece holds a story, a memory, a piece of me. This house isn't just where I live, it's where I became. The smell of the place, old wood, lemon polish, and faint traces of lavender, feels like comfort. The worn grooves on the banister were carved by years of hands sliding down it, hurrying to breakfast or to answer the phone before it stopped ringing. I can still hear the echoes of laughter from when my son, Ethan, was little. The squeak of his sneakers on the floor, the way he'd shout, "Mom!" as he ran through the living room with his arms full of toy cars. Now, the house is quieter, except for the occasional creak of wood or the hum of the refrigerator. It's strange how silence can be both peaceful and heavy. I pause by the photo wall. Ethan's wedding picture sits in the center, surrounded by snapshots of birthdays, holidays, and baby Sophia. I remember that day, how proud he looked, how his bride, Vanessa, smiled so shyly as they cut the cake. I had hoped that love would last forever, but people change. Time changes them. When Sophia comes over now, she barely glances at the photos. She calls the house old-fashioned. She says things like, "You should really get rid of this wallpaper, Grandma," or, "This place could use a renovation." I just smile, but inside, I know what she really means. She doesn't see the beauty in what's old, she only sees inconvenience. Ethan's been dropping hints, too subtle at first, then less so. "Mom," he said just last week, "you'd be so much more comfortable in a smaller place. Maybe one closer to us." I laughed and told him I was fine right where I was. He smiled politely, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a kind of calculation I'd never noticed before. It's the same look I see in Sophia sometimes when she walks around, glancing at the paintings, the furniture, the antique china. She doesn't just see memories, she sees value, things to be sold, profits to be made. I'm not naive. I might be old, but I'm not blind. People think age dulls your mind, but sometimes it just sharpens your awareness in ways the young can't understand. I can read the tone of a conversation the way others read a newspaper headline. At breakfast that morning, I make toast and jam, the same way I always have. As I eat, I hear my daughter-in-law's voice in my head from last week's dinner. "It would be so much easier if you didn't have to handle all the upkeep, Marjorie. You deserve a rest." She meant well, I think, but the way Ethan looked at her, the way Sophia smirked and said, "You could sell this house for a fortune," those words stuck with me. I carry my tea to the living room and sit in my favorite armchair, the one by the big bay window. From here I can see the front garden Henry and I planted together. It's overgrown now, but still beautiful in its wild way, roses tangled with ivy, daisies poking through cracks in the walkway. I remember planting those roses on our 10th anniversary. Henry dug the holes while I followed behind, pressing each flower into the earth, laughing when the dirt smeared my apron. He used to say, "This house will always have your touch, Marjorie. No one else could make it feel like home." And he was right. Every inch of this place carries my fingerprints. Now, the thought of someone else living here, someone who doesn't know the creak in the floor by the stairs or the way the light hits the mantel at sunset, it makes my chest tighten. I stand and wander into the kitchen, running my hand along the counter. The tiles are cracked in places, and the cabinets could use new paint. I know it's not perfect, but perfection never mattered to me. Warmth did, familiarity did, and both live here. I can almost hear Henry's laugh echo through the room. I can see him sitting at this very table, reading the newspaper while sipping his coffee. I whisper softly, "You'd tell me to stay strong, wouldn't you?" And though he's been gone for years, I can almost feel him answering steady and reassuring as always. Then, I catch my reflection in the window, older, smaller, yes, but still me. I straighten my shoulders. I might be 72, but I'm far from done. I've survived wars, losses, and the quiet ache of widowhood. I can certainly handle a few condescending smiles from my own family. As I turn to leave the kitchen, my eyes land on the writing desk tucked in the corner. It's cluttered with pens, old letters, and bills. I pull out the drawer and see the worn leather folder that holds the deed to my house. I trace the embossed letters with a trembling finger. That paper represents everything I've built, every sacrifice, every hour of work, every bit of love poured into these walls. I remember signing it for the first time, my signature flowing smoothly and confidently. Now my handwriting might be shaky, but my conviction isn't. A slow smile spreads across my face. They might think I'm too old to make decisions, but they're wrong. They think I'm sentimental, fragile, someone who'll sign whatever papers they put in front of me. But this house is my legacy, my story, my proof that I mattered. And as I slide the folder back into the drawer, I whisper quietly to myself, not yet. Not ever, not on their terms. But what they don't know is that my mind is sharper than ever, and I've already begun planning my next move. A week later, an envelope arrives from an old friend I haven't heard from in decades. It's early morning, and I'm halfway through my tea when I hear the faint clatter of the mail slot. Bills, advertisements, the usual clutter except for one envelope that looks different. Cream-colored, thick paper. My name written in neat cursive across the front. The handwriting strikes me before I even open it, elegant, confident, familiar in a way that tugs at something deep inside. I slide a knife carefully under the seal and unfold the letter. It's from Ruth. I haven't thought of her in years. We used to work together at the library, back when life still felt busy and full of purpose. Ruth was the kind of woman who always smelled faintly of books and lilac perfume. We used to share tea during our lunch breaks, writing little notes to each other about the patrons who amused us most. I smile at the memory as my eyes move down the page. Her handwriting is exactly how I remember it, precise but warm, each line slanting gracefully. She writes that she's been hosting a community writing circle for seniors at the town library every Thursday afternoon. She says it's a place to share stories, practice handwriting, and keep the art of the written word alive. I almost laugh. Of all the times for something like this to land on my doorstep, it had to be now. Maybe fate was teasing me. I trace the signature at the bottom. With love, Ruth. I can picture her face, lined with years but still bright with kindness. For a moment, I almost set the letter aside. I can already hear Sophia's voice in my head. A writing club, Grandma? That's adorable. But something stops me. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's that faint ache from her laughter the other day. Or maybe it's the realization that I'm not ready to let go of the part of myself that used to love the written word. By the following Thursday, I decide to go. I pull out my nicest cardigan and the pearl earrings Henry gave me on our 15th anniversary. The mirror shows an older woman, yes, but there's a spark in her eyes I haven't seen in a long time. When I arrive at the library, I'm greeted by the scent of old pages and polished wood. Time seems to have stood still here. The air is thick with quiet stories. I follow the sound of voices until I reach a small room tucked behind the stacks. A group of 6 or 7 people sits around a long wooden table, pens and paper scattered before them. Marjorie, Ruth exclaims when she sees me, rising to hug me tight. Her warmth makes me feel instantly at home. I was hoping you'd come. Sit, there's tea in the corner. I take a seat beside her and glance at the others. There's Harold, a retired teacher who writes letters to his grandchildren every week. Betty, who brings her collection of old postcards. And then there's a quiet man named Paul, who barely looks up but has the most beautiful penmanship I've ever seen. We start with simple exercises, tracing loops and curves, practicing letters like schoolchildren. My fingers ache at first, stiff and uncooperative, but Ruth's voice is patient, soothing. Don't force it, she says. Let your hand remember. Let your hand remember. The words echo in my head as I move my pen slowly across the paper. At first, the ink wobbles. But then, little by little, something starts to come back. The rhythm, the flow, the quiet joy of creating something with my own hand. By the end of the session, I've written a full paragraph without trembling too much. It's not perfect, but it feels like me again. I even catch Ruth smiling at my page. You always had the most graceful script, she says softly. It's still there, Marjorie. Just needs a little coaxing. Her words make my chest tighten with emotion. It's been so long since anyone said something kind about my handwriting. So long since anyone even noticed. After the session, we sit together over tea and talk about old times, the long days at the library, the people we helped, the quiet satisfaction of ink on paper. I tell her about Sophia and the incident with the birthday card. Ruth listens without interrupting, her eyes filled with understanding. "Oh, my dear," she says finally. "The young forget that the world once ran on handwriting. Letters built love stories, saved lives, shaped history. It's not just ink, it's memory in motion." Her phrase lodges deep in my heart. Memory in motion. I roll it around in my mind the whole way home. That night, I take out my old notebook and begin practicing again. At first, the lines come shaky, uneven, but after a few minutes, the movements grow smoother. I fill pages with simple phrases, favorite quotes, and my own name, over and over. It's strange how something so small can make you feel whole again. I feel like I'm taking back something Sophia tried to steal from me, not intentionally, maybe, but through her careless cruelty. Days turn into weeks. I keep attending the writing circle, and each time my hand feels stronger, my confidence bolder. Ruth calls me her comeback student, and I can't help but laugh. Soon, I start writing letters again, short notes to friends I'd lost touch with, even to my daughter-in-law thanking her for dinner last weekend. Each time I seal an envelope, there's a quiet satisfaction in knowing that these marks, imperfect as they are, carry meaning. But it isn't just about letters anymore. It's about reclaiming a skill that was mine long before anyone decided it was outdated. And deep down, I begin to feel that maybe, just maybe, this revival of my handwriting has a larger purpose. For the first time in a long while, I feel proud again, but I also realize this skill might serve a bigger purpose soon. That Sunday, the whole family gathers at my house for dinner, a rare occurrence lately. The moment I wake up, there's a flutter in my chest. It's part excitement, part dread. I've hosted dozens of dinners over the years, but lately, they've felt less like family gatherings and more like quiet performances, everyone pretending everything's fine while little truths simmer beneath the surface. I start the morning early, peeling potatoes and seasoning the roast just the way Henry liked it. The smell of rosemary and garlic fills the kitchen, mingling with the scent of fresh bread cooling on the counter. Cooking has always been my language of love, even when the people I cook for forget how to listen. By late afternoon, the table is set, my best china, the lace tablecloth, and the old silver cutlery that only comes out on special occasions. The house feels alive again, humming with purpose. I light 2 candles in the center, their glow soft against the fading sunlight. When the doorbell rings, I smooth my apron and open the door with a smile. Ethan stands there, holding a bottle of wine. His wife, Vanessa, is beside him, smiling politely as always. And behind them, Sophia scrolls through her phone, barely glancing up. "Hi, Mom," Ethan says, stepping in and giving me a quick hug that feels more like habit than warmth. "Dinner smells amazing," Vanessa says softly, setting a bouquet of flowers on the counter. Sophia looks up just long enough to mumble, "Hey, Grandma." I pretend not to notice the way her eyes sweep over the room, taking in the outdated wallpaper and the old furniture. To her, this house is a relic of a past she doesn't understand. We sit down to eat, and for a few minutes, everything feels almost normal. The clink of silverware, the soft murmur of conversation, it's comforting, familiar. But beneath it all, I can sense the tension waiting to surface. "So, Mom," Ethan begins casually, "Vanessa and I were talking about how much work this house must be for you. It's so big, and you're here alone." I smile politely. "Oh, I manage just fine, it keeps me active," he chuckles softly. "Sure, but wouldn't you rather have less to worry about? Maybe a smaller place, one that's easier to keep up." Before I can answer, Sophia pipes up, "Yeah, Grandma. You could get one of those condos with the elevators and stuff. You wouldn't have to climb stairs anymore." I can tell she's trying to sound helpful, but her tone carries that same underlying smugness I've come to recognize. I take a sip of water before replying. "I appreciate your concern, but this house and we've been together a long time. I'm not quite ready to let her go." Ethan exchanges a quick glance with Vanessa. "We're just thinking ahead, Mom. It'd be smart to plan now rather than later." I nod, pretending to ponder his words. "Planning is always smart," I say evenly. "So is holding on to what matters." The air grows quiet for a moment. Vanessa clears her throat and changes the subject to Sophia's classes. "She's studying business, apparently top of her class," Ethan boasts. Sophia grins proudly, finally putting her phone down. "That's wonderful," I say genuinely. "What are you learning these days?" Oh, a lot about investments and property, she says, stabbing a piece of roast with her fork. Real estate's kind of my thing. You'd be surprised how much money people make flipping old houses. My fork pauses halfway to my mouth. Old houses, huh? Yeah, she says with a smirk. Some of them look ancient like this one. No offense, but once you renovate, you can sell them for so much. It's all about potential. I feel the faintest sting, but I keep my expression pleasant. I suppose that's true, though some houses aren't meant to be flipped. Sophia laughs lightly. Oh, Grandma, everything's meant to be upgraded eventually. The table goes quiet again. I can feel Vanessa's discomfort, the way she avoids meeting my eyes. Ethan clears his throat and offers me more potatoes as if food might fix the moment. I take them with a small nod. Inside, I feel something shift, not anger, exactly, but resolve. The kind that settles in your bones and doesn't let go. I glance at Sophia. You know, I say softly, maybe one day my handwriting will surprise you. She grins, misunderstanding completely. Sure, Grandma. Maybe by then they'll have invented a pen that writes for you. She giggles and goes back to her phone. I just smile and continue eating. Let her laugh. Let her think she's clever. Because while she's busy mocking what she doesn't understand, I'm already thinking of what comes next. When dinner ends, I pack leftovers into containers for them to take home. Vanessa thanks me sweetly, as always. Ethan kisses my cheek and tells me he'll call about that real estate paperwork soon. I nod as if it's a casual conversation, though the words echo in my mind. When they leave, the house falls quiet again. The candles have burned low, their wax pooling on the tablecloth. I look around at the dishes, the plates, the crumbs, and I feel both exhausted and alive. They think they know what's best for me. They think I'm weak, sentimental, naive. But they've forgotten who I used to be, the woman who built this home with her own hands, who balanced checkbooks, who handled every bit of paperwork for this family long before Ethan ever learned to sign his name. I walk to the window and watch their car pull away. My reflection in the glass looks calm, but inside, my mind is already moving. She laughs again, not knowing just how right I am. That night, I sit by the window with a pen in my hand, staring at the moonlight spilling across my old notepad. The house is silent except for the soft ticking of the clock on the mantel and the hum of the refrigerator. My family's voices still echo faintly in my ears, Sophia's mocking tone, Ethan's polite insistence, Vanessa's quiet discomfort. I let the pen roll between my fingers as I think about everything that's been said. Every word, every laugh, every subtle hint that I'm too old to manage on my own. For most of my life, I've been the kind of woman who avoided confrontation. I believed kindness could solve most things. But kindness, I've learned, can sometimes make people mistake you for weak. Tonight, as I look down at the empty page before me, I realize I'm done letting other people decide what I'm capable of. I place the pen's tip on the paper and write my name slowly, deliberately. The first attempt is shaky, the second a little steadier. By the fifth try, I feel a rhythm forming. The loops of the J and R glide more confidently, the tail of the E curving neatly into place. It's as if my hand remembers something. My heart's known all along. I'm not finished yet. Over the next few days, I start a new routine. Every morning after breakfast, I sit at the kitchen table with my notepad and practice. I fill pages with words, quotes, even recipes written in full cursive. It's slow, almost meditative work. My fingers ache by the end, but I don't mind. Pain has never frightened me. It's proof that I'm still alive, still capable of creating something from nothing. I bring my notebook to Ruth's writing circle again that Thursday. She smiles when she sees me walk in. "Look at you, Marjorie," she says, taking my hands. "You've got a glow about you." I laugh softly. "It's called stubbornness." Ruth chuckles. "Sometimes that's just another name for strength." We sit and write side by side. She has us copy passages from old letters, focusing on the flow of each letter, the weight of each stroke. She calls it muscle memory for the soul. The phrase makes me smile. For once, I don't feel like time is my enemy. I feel like it's lending me a second chance. Later, when the others have left, Ruth asks how things are at home. I hesitate but decide to tell her about the dinner, about Sophia's laughter and Ethan's insistence that I move. Ruth listens quietly, nodding. "You know," she says gently, "sometimes people confuse love with control. They want to help you, but they forget you've already lived a whole life without needing permission." Her words hit deeper than I expect. It's true my family isn't cruel, just blind. They see me as fragile, fading. But I'm still here, still sharp. And as I walk home that evening, the crisp air filling my lungs, I make myself a promise. I won't let anyone write the last chapter of my life for me. That night, I take out Henry's old fountain pen. It's heavier than modern pens, the kind that demands attention with every stroke. I dip it into the ink and begin to write, not practice this time, but thoughts. Plans, observations. I make a list of things to organize: bank accounts, insurance papers, property documents. It's not paranoia, it's preparation. The next morning, I call George. He's an old friend of Henry's, a retired notary, and one of the few people I still trust completely. We chat for a while about old times before I ask, "George, do you still handle paperwork? Legal documents, deeds, that sort of thing?" He laughs. "Once a notary, always a notary, Marjorie. What are you up to?" "Oh, just some updates," I say casually. "I want to make sure everything's in order. You know how families can be." He hesitates for a moment before replying, "Of course, come by next week. We'll take a look together." After hanging up, I sit quietly for a moment, my pen resting on the paper. It feels strange, this mix of calm and defiance. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm steering my own story again. Every night, before bed, I read over what I've written: lists, letters, little notes to myself. Each word feels like an anchor, pulling me closer to who I used to be. There's strength in ink, there's permanence. People think power comes from money or youth, but they forget the quiet authority of a written word. Once it's down, it can't be taken back. A few days later, I receive a text from Ethan. "Hey Mom, let's talk soon about the house paperwork. Sophia's got some ideas from her class. Might be a good time to make things official." I stare at the message for a long moment. Official. It's such a polite word for what it really means: control. I don't reply. Instead, I open my notebook and write, in slow, deliberate strokes. When they come for what's mine, I'll already be 3 steps ahead. The next morning, I head to the library early, my notebook tucked under my arm. Ruth waves from across the room. "You're becoming our star student," she teases. I smile. "Just trying to stay useful." "You're doing more than that," she says warmly. "You're reclaiming yourself." That night, when I return home, I light a single candle and sit by the window again. My handwriting exercises are scattered across the table pages of my name. Phrases like "strength through grace" and "never underestimate quiet women." I glance at them, a faint smile tugging at my lips. I think of Sophia's laughter, Ethan's careful tone, Vanessa's silence. I think of Ruth's steady encouragement, of George's reassuring voice. I think of Henry, his faith in me, his belief that I could handle anything. And for the first time in a long while, I believe it too. Outside, the moon hangs full and bright, reflecting in the glass like a reminder that no matter how dark things get, light always finds a way in. I lift my pen and sign my name one last time before putting it down. And by the time Sophia mocks me again, I'll be ready. A few days later, I receive a formal-looking letter from my son's lawyer. The envelope is crisp, thick, and expensive-looking, the kind that always seems to carry bad news disguised as professional matters. The sender's name, Henderson and Price Legal Associates, is embossed across the top. My stomach tightens. Ethan's mentioned them before they handle his business affairs. I set my cup of tea down and carefully slit the envelope open. Inside is a neatly typed letter, printed on letterhead so polished it almost shines. I start reading, and by the 3rd line, I already know exactly what it is. It's a proposal, the kind that sounds generous and well-intentioned on the surface but hides something sharp underneath. It explains how Ethan and his lawyer have arranged a simplified ownership structure for my property, my house, to secure it under a family trust. The wording is slippery, too carefully chosen. "For your protection, for the family's stability, to ensure smooth management of assets." By the end, I can barely keep my hand steady. I set the letter down and stare at it for a long time. There's no outright deceit, it's the subtle kind. The type that assumes you won't notice what's missing. I may be 72, but I've read enough contracts in my lifetime to know what I'm looking at. It's not protection, it's transfer. The moment I sign those papers, the house no longer belongs to me, it becomes family property, managed by Ethan. In other words, I'd be handing over everything Henry and I built. All those years of saving, of sacrifice, reduced to a signature. I close my eyes and take a slow breath. They think I'll just sign it because it looks official. Because I'm old. Because I write slowly now and take my time reading things. They don't realize time has only made me more careful. I fold the letter back into the envelope and place it neatly on the table. I don't touch it for hours. Instead, I go about my day as if nothing's changed, sweeping the porch, watering the roses, making soup for lunch. But the words of that letter keep circling in my mind, coiling tighter each time I think about them. After dinner, I call George. I need you to take a look at something, I tell him. My voice is calm, but underneath it, I can feel the simmer of quiet anger. He agrees to come by the next morning. When he arrives, I have the letter ready. He reads it twice without saying a word, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. Finally, he exhales through his nose and sets it down. "This isn't right," he says simply. "It's worded to make you think you're protected, but it's basically a transfer of control. So I'm not imagining it," I say quietly. He shakes his head. "Not at all. Once you sign, the house is no longer yours. You'd still be able to live here, technically, but you wouldn't own it. That's what they're banking on, you not realizing." A bitter laugh escapes me. They think I'm too old to notice. George leans back in his chair. "You're smarter than they think. What do you want to do about it?" "I'll handle it," I say. "But I need your help making sure everything on my end is airtight." He nods slowly, understanding the weight of my tone. "Of course, whatever you need." After he leaves, I sit for a long while, staring at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me doesn't look frail. She looks determined. There's a quiet steel in her eyes that even I hadn't noticed before. Later that evening, I take out my writing notebook. On a fresh page, I write, "They sent a letter asking for my signature. They think they can take this house from me with words. But I've lived a life written in words and I know how to wield them." The next day, I go to the library early, long before the writing group meets. Ruth's not there yet, so I sit alone in the corner by the tall windows. I pull out the letter and start copying its text word for word in my notebook, each line in my own careful handwriting. I want to understand every part of it. Writing it myself helps me see where the traps are hidden. By the time Ruth arrives, I've already filled 3 pages. She glances at the document and raises an eyebrow. "That looks serious." "It is," I tell her. "Someone's trying to rewrite my story for me." She doesn't pry, but I can see in her eyes that she understands. "Then make sure your version is the one that lasts," she says simply. That night, I light a candle on my desk and begin drafting something new, something that looks a lot like the letter they sent me. But it's not. Mine is written in my own hand, each word chosen carefully, deliberately. It's a statement of ownership, a legal declaration confirming my rights to my property, but written with the authority of someone who knows exactly what she's doing. When I finish, I sign my name at the bottom in ink. My hand trembles only slightly, but the signature is strong, confident, beautiful. I sit back, staring at it for a moment, feeling the weight of what I've just done. I've spent weeks rebuilding my handwriting, rediscovering my control. Now I know why. It wasn't just about pride, it was preparation. I fold the document neatly and slide it into a folder with the property deed and other important papers. Then I place it in the top drawer of my desk, locking it with a quiet click. When I stand, the candlelight flickers across the room, throwing soft shadows over the framed photos of my family. My eyes linger on the one of Sophia, her teenage smile bright and careless. I wonder what she'll say when she realizes how wrong she's been about me. I turn off the lamp, leaving the letter from Ethan on the table, untouched and unsigned. And that's when I begin drafting something that will change everything. In a dusty drawer in my study lies the original deed to my house, untouched for decades. The paper has yellowed with age, the ink faint but still readable, like the ghost of a younger me lingering between its lines. I sit at my desk with the morning light streaming across it, the smell of old wood and ink filling the air. My fingers trace the raised seal at the bottom, the one Henry and I had signed together all those years ago when we first bought this place. That memory comes back so vividly I can almost hear his laugh echoing down the hallway. We were so proud that day, so full of dreams. We didn't have much, but we had this house, and that was everything. I remember the way he'd said, "This place will always have our name on it, Marjorie, no matter what happens." I believed him. I still do. But now, that promise is being tested. After my talk with George, I spent the entire night reading through every document I owned: old tax receipts, mortgage papers, insurance statements. My eyes ached, but I refused to stop. It wasn't just about protecting my home, it was about proving, if only to myself, that I wasn't powerless. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I packed a small folder with the deed, my identification, and the legal declaration I'd handwritten. Then I called George. "Would you be willing to accompany me to the notary's office?" I asked. He hesitated only for a moment before saying, "Of course, Marjorie. What are we doing?" "We're making sure my signature still means something," I said simply. The office was quiet and smelled faintly of paper and polish. The notary, a younger woman with kind eyes, looked surprised to see me arrive with such confidence. I explained that I wanted to update the ownership records to reflect my current intentions. I didn't mention Ethan or Sophia. This wasn't about confrontation, it was about control. George stood by as I signed the documents. My pen glided smoothly, my signature strong and deliberate. For a moment, I forgot about the stiffness in my fingers. Every curve of ink felt like a statement. I am still here. I still decide. When it was done, the notary smiled. "You have a beautiful signature, Mrs. Hayes," she said. "It's rare to see handwriting like that anymore." I smiled faintly. "It's taken a lot of practice." As we left the office, George patted my shoulder. "You handled that beautifully." "I've had years of practice handling things," I replied, and I meant it. That afternoon, I sat at my desk again, carefully placing the new notarized papers in a folder marked "House Updated." I locked it inside the same drawer where I'd kept the old deed. But I didn't stop there. I made 2 copies, one for my safety deposit box and one to keep in a new hiding spot I'd chosen with care. It's funny how people underestimate the elderly. They assume our minds are slow, our reflexes dull. But there's one thing age sharpens more than anything else: foresight. I know exactly how my distirative lige son thinks, how Sophia schemes with that careless entitlement only youth can afford. They believe I'll go along quietly, that I'll be grateful for their help. I almost pity them. Almost. That evening, I write a letter not to my family but to myself. It reads, "They will come again, with their smiles and their plans. They will bring papers for me to sign, words wrapped in kindness but sharpened like knives. When that happens, I will not tremble. I will remember the ink on this page, the steady line of my name, and the truth that cannot be taken from me. This house is mine." I tuck the letter into the drawer with the deed. Then I sit back and look around the room. The late afternoon light filters through the curtains, landing on the framed photo of Henry. His eyes, even frozen in that photograph, seem to gleam with pride. "Don't worry, Henry," I whisper. "They won't take it. Not while I'm breathing." The next day, Ruth notices something different about me during our writing circle. "You're glowing," she says. "What's happened?" I smile. "I just signed something important." Her eyebrows lift. "Ah, a good signature then." "The best kind," I reply. "One that changes everything." That night, I pour myself a small glass of wine and sit by the fire. It's quiet, peaceful. The house creaks softly as if it's breathing with me. For the first time in weeks, I feel calm, not the brittle kind that comes from pretending, but a deep, steady calm, rooted in certainty. I know now that I've done the right thing. I've ensured that no one can take what's mine. And yet, I can't help but think about what will happen when they find out. Ethan's polite patience will vanish. Sophia's smile will falter. There will be confusion first, then anger. But I'm ready for that too. They might see me as old and frail, but I've just proven to them and to myself that I still hold the pen in this story. And I intend to write every last word myself. Before bed, I walk to my desk one more time. I open the drawer, glance at the neatly stacked documents, and close it with quiet finality. I press my palm against the cool wood, feeling the faint thrum of ownership beneath it, something alive, something mine. When the time comes, that shaky handwriting will speak louder than any insult. Weeks pass, and I can feel the tension building every time my family visits. It starts subtly, like a change in the weather. Little shifts in tone, glances that last a second too long, words that sound kind but feel loaded. Ethan still calls every few days, his voice calm and measured, but beneath it, I can hear his growing impatience. He always ends the same way: "We'll sort this soon, Mom." Sophia, on the other hand, has grown bolder. She drops by more often now, but never without an agenda. She'll bring over pastries or coffee, pretending it's just a visit, but within 10 minutes, the topic always turns to the house. "So, Grandma," she says one afternoon, sipping her latte on my couch. "Dad says you've been thinking about that trust thing. Have you signed yet?" I shake my head, smiling. "Not yet, sweetheart. I'm still reviewing the details." Her smile tightens. "It's not complicated, you know. It's just to make sure you're taken care of." "Oh, I'm well taken care of already," I reply, keeping my tone light. "I've lived here for over 40 years, and this house has never failed to take care of me." Her eyes flick toward the writing desk in the corner, the same one that holds my hidden deed and the updated papers. I see her gaze linger there a moment too long. I make a mental note. Over the next few weeks, the visits become more frequent. Sometimes Ethan comes with her, sometimes Vanessa too. They start asking questions about my health, my finances, my will. Always politely, always wrapped in concern. But I can sense the unease growing behind their smiles. Something in their plan isn't going the way they expected. Meanwhile, I continue my quiet routine. I still attend Ruth's writing circle every Thursday, still practice my handwriting every morning. It's become a form of meditation, each stroke of ink reminding me that I'm in control. The pages of my notebook are now filled with paragraphs written in strong, flowing script. I even start journaling about everything that's happening, every visit, every phone call, every strange shift in tone. It's not paranoia, it's documentation. Ruth notices the change in me. "You write like someone who's preparing for something," she says one day as she peers over my shoulder. "Maybe I am," I answer quietly. She studies me for a moment, then nods. "Then I hope it's something that brings you peace." It does, in its own way. Writing helps me breathe. It helps me stay grounded while the storm outside my walls brews stronger each day. One afternoon, while I'm out in the garden trimming the rose bushes, I see Ethan's car pull up unexpectedly. He steps out, suit still on from work, expression tight. "Mom," he says, walking toward me. "We need to talk." I wipe my hands on my apron. "Of course. Come inside." He doesn't even sit down once we're in the kitchen. "I spoke to the lawyer. He said you still haven't signed the documents. They're waiting on you." "I know," I say simply. "Mom, it's been weeks." His tone hardens. "You can't just ignore this. We're trying to make sure everything's in place for you. If something happens, I interrupt gently. "I've already taken care of it." He blinks, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I say slowly, "that you don't need to worry about this house or me anymore." For a moment, silence stretches between us. He looks at me like he's seeing me for the first time, as if the polite, compliant woman he thought he knew has been replaced by someone else. Someone harder. "Mom," he says again, quieter this time. "Please don't make this difficult." I smile faintly. "I'm not making anything difficult, Ethan. I'm simply keeping what's mine." He exhales sharply, clearly frustrated. "You're being unreasonable." "Maybe," I say softly, "but at least I'm being myself." He leaves soon after, muttering something about coming back later when you've had time to think. As his car drives away, I feel a strange calm settle over me. He doesn't know it yet, but the game he's trying to play is already over. That night, I pull out my notebook and write, "They've begun to notice the shift. The air is changing. They think they're pushing me into a corner, but all they're really doing is showing me who they are." The next morning, Sophia comes by again, this time alone. She's all smiles. Too sweet, too polished. She brings me a coffee, just the way I like it, or so she says. I thank her politely and set it down untouched. "So," she says casually, glancing around, "Dad told me you've been handling the papers yourself. You know, Grandma, it's really not safe to manage these things without professional help." I tilt my head. "You think I need help, dear?" She laughs lightly. "Not like that. It's just you know how tricky legal stuff can be. You wouldn't want to accidentally sign the wrong thing." I let her words hang there for a moment, then smile. "You're right," I say softly. "That's why I've made sure I've signed exactly the right thing." Something flickers in her expression. For the first time, she looks uncertain. I take a quiet sip of tea, savoring the small victory. That evening, I make sure all my important documents are safely stored. The originals, notarized and signed, are hidden in my desk drawer beneath the false bottom Henry built years ago. One copy sits in my safety. Deposit box at the bank, the other sealed in an envelope marked for George. As I lock the drawer, I feel the weight of certainty settle in my chest. The storm is building, yes, but I've already built my shelter. Outside, thunder rumbles distantly, a low warning from the sky. The air feels thick, electric. I look out the window, watching the dark clouds gather over the neighborhood. The first drops of rain hit the glass, slow and deliberate. I whisper softly to myself, "Let it come." By the time they realize what's happening, it'll already be too late. On a gray Saturday morning, Ethan and Sophia show up unannounced, papers in hand. I hear the car before I see it, the crunch of tires on wet gravel, the slam of doors, the hurried footsteps on the porch. There's no phone call, no warning, just the sound of my son's knock, firm and insistent, echoing through the quiet house. I take a deep breath before opening the door. They're both standing there, side by side. Ethan's face is tight, determined. Sophia's is all false sweetness, the kind that looks polite but hides impatience. She's holding a folder pressed against her chest like it's a weapon she can't wait to draw. "Morning, Mom," Ethan says, voice clipped. "We need to talk." I open the door wider and gesture for them to come in. "Of course. Come sit down. I'll make tea." Sophia sighs dramatically as she steps into the living room. "Grandma, you don't need to make tea, this won't take long." "Oh, I think it will," I say softly, already walking toward the kitchen. When I return with the tray teapot, sugar bowl and cups neatly arranged, they're already seated on the couch, the folder open between them. Papers are spread across the coffee table like the remains of a dissected animal. Ethan gestures toward them. "Mom, this is just a follow-up to what we discussed before. It's the official trust agreement. I had the lawyers make it. Simple, straightforward, nothing complicated," Sophia adds. "It's basically just to make things easier for everyone. You'll still live here, of course. It just puts everything in one place, legally speaking." I pour the tea, my movements slow and deliberate. "That's very thoughtful of you," I say, handing them each a cup. "But you've gone to an awful lot of trouble." Ethan leans forward, clasping his hands together. "Mom, I just want to make sure you're taken care of. Please, don't make this harder than it has to be." His voice is calm, but his jaw is tight. He's trying to sound patient, but I can feel the frustration underneath. Sophia slides a pen across the table toward me. "Here," she says brightly. "You just need to sign at the bottom. I've marked it with a sticky note." Her tone is cheerful, confident, like a teacher coaxing a stubborn child. I pick up the pen and study it for a moment. My hand trembles slightly, but not from fear, from control, from the effort of holding back the satisfaction that simmers beneath my calm expression. "I see," I say, glancing at the papers. "And what happens once I sign?" Ethan exhales, as though explaining something to someone simple. "Nothing changes immediately. It just means the property's protected under a family name. You'll still be listed as the resident owner. But the legal title, well, that goes under the trust. In your name," I say quietly. "In the family's name," he corrects, but he doesn't meet my eyes. I smile faintly. "Of course." I take the first few pages and start reading, line by line. The words are dense, calculated, designed to sound harmless. But I see it instantly, the same clause George warned me about, the same language that quietly removes my authority over the property. After a few minutes, I set the pen down and fold my hands neatly on my lap. "You know," I say, my tone calm and steady, "I do appreciate how much you both care about me." Sophia beams, sensing victory. Ethan relaxes slightly. "But I'm afraid I can't sign this." The silence that follows is sharp enough to cut through the air. Ethan blinks, confused, then angry. "What? Why not?" "Because," I say evenly, "I've already taken care of everything." Sophia laughs nervously. "What do you mean, Grandma? You haven't even—" "I mean," I interrupt gently, "that this house is already legally protected. I've updated the deed myself." Ethan's face drains of color. "You did what?" "I spoke with a notary," I say. "And I had some documents prepared. Everything's in order." He leans forward. "Mom, you can't just— those things are complicated. You could have made a mistake." I smile. "Oh, I didn't make a mistake. George helped me." "You remember George, don't you? Your father's old friend." Sophia's face twists, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her polished exterior. "So, what did you sign, exactly?" Just something that makes sure this house stays exactly where it belongs, I say softly. Ethan runs a hand through his hair, pacing the room. Mom, this isn't fair. We were trying to help you. I know, I reply. But sometimes help comes with a price I'm not willing to pay. He stops, staring at me, frustration etched into his features. You don't trust us. I hold his gaze. I trust you to look after your family. I just don't trust you to look after my home. For a long moment, no one speaks. The rain outside has started again, tapping gently against the window. I can feel their disappointment hanging in the air like humidity before a storm. Finally, Ethan gathers the papers, shoving them back into the folder. Fine, he says curtly. If that's how you want it. Sophia stands too, but her confidence seems to have cracked. She doesn't look me in the eye. At the door, Ethan pauses and turns back. You're making a mistake, Mom. Don't come crying to us when this blows up in your face. I smile gently. Oh, I won't, but thank you for your concern. The door closes behind them, and silence floods the house once more. I walk back to the living room, where their untouched cups of tea sit cooling on the table. I stare at them for a long time, then gather the papers they left behind and place them neatly in my desk drawer right next to the real deed. I take out my pen and write in my notebook. They came with their papers, their pens, and their polite smiles. They thought they were trapping me, but they didn't realize the ink was already dry on my decision. I read the line twice before closing the notebook and smiling to myself. Tomorrow, I'll make sure the world knows whose handwriting truly matters. At the courthouse, I walk in wearing my best coat, clutching my handbag like armor. The morning air is crisp, the kind that wakes you up fully, sharpening every sense. I chose this day carefully quiet, unassuming. A weekday morning when no one from my family would think to visit. The courthouse sits on Main Street, an old brick building with tall windows and an air of authority that reminds me of the library I once worked in. As I step inside, the faint smell of paper, ink, and polished floors surrounds me. I pause for a moment, taking it all in. For some people, places like this are intimidating. For me, it feels like justice has a scent, and this is it. George is waiting near the clerk's desk, a kind smile beneath his silver mustache. Morning, Marjorie, he greets warmly, tipping his hat. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be, I reply. We walk together through the hall, our footsteps echoing softly against the marble floor. Each step feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. I've signed countless documents in my life, mortgages, job contracts, school forms, but none have carried the weight of this one. At the clerk's counter, a young woman greets us. Mrs. Hayes? We have your documents prepared, she says, flipping through a neatly organized folder. You'll just need to confirm your identification and sign here and here. Her tone is professional, brisk, but there's kindness in her eyes. I hand over my ID, steady and sure. I'd like to review everything again, please, I say politely. She nods, sliding the papers toward me. I take my time, reading every line even though I already know what they say. My new deed, my declaration of ownership, my instructions for transfer upon my passing all sealed, witnessed, and notarized. But this time, there's a surprise built in. One my family will never expect. George stands silently beside me as I sign. The pen glides effortlessly across the page, my name forming in graceful, confident loops. My handwriting, once mocked as shaky and useless, now feels like a weapon of quiet precision. The clerk smiles as I finish. That's a beautiful signature, she says sincerely. Thank you, I answer softly. It's taken a lifetime to make it look that way. George chuckles. Still got the touch, Marjorie. Still got the will, I say with a small smirk. When all the signatures are complete, the clerk stamps each document with a crisp thunk of her seal. The sound is final, satisfying. She gathers the pages neatly and says, Everything's official now. You'll receive the certified copies by mail. Official. The word rings in my ears. Not the false kind of official my son's lawyer tried to push on me. This is my doing. My choice. As we leave the courthouse, the sun has come out, breaking through the gray morning clouds. I stop on the steps, looking up at the light spilling over the street. The weight in my chest lifts, replaced by something warm and quiet. Feels good, doesn't it? George says beside me. I nod slowly. It feels right. Like something's been set straight. We walk to a small cafe down the street. one of those old-fashioned places that still serves tea in porcelain cups. As we sit, George studies me with a knowing look. "You've got a plan for what comes next, don't you?" I smile faintly. "You've always known me too well. Your family won't like this," he warns gently. "I'm counting on that," I say. He laughs softly. "Marjorie Hayes, you've still got fire." "Maybe," I answer, stirring my tea. But this time, it's the kind that burns clean. When I return home that afternoon, the house feels different, lighter, somehow. The walls seem to hum with quiet energy. The sunlight slants across the floorboards, catching dust motes that swirl like tiny sparks. I go straight to my study and open the desk drawer. I place the newly signed and sealed deed on top of the folder containing the old one. Two versions of my life, stacked neatly. One represents the woman who built this home with her husband's hands. The other represents the woman who refused to let anyone take it away. I sit for a while, staring at them both. It's strange how something as simple as ink can carry so much power. It's just a name on paper, yet that name holds decades of love, sacrifice, and memory. I take out my notebook and write a single sentence across a fresh page. My handwriting has become my voice again, and this time, it speaks only for me. As the sun begins to set, I make myself a small dinner and sit by the window, watching the world outside. I can hear the distant laughter of children, the hum of cars, the soft rustle of wind through the trees. Life continues, ordinary and beautiful. I think of Sophia, her laughter when she mocked me. I can still hear it, but it no longer stings. Instead, it feels like the spark that lit the fire that brought me here. If she hadn't laughed, I might never have remembered who I am. When I finally go to bed, I feel lighter than I have in years. My heart is calm, my mind at ease. There's still more to be done, but for now, the hardest part is over. And soon, that dignity will speak for itself. The next week, I host a family dinner again, but this time I feel completely in control. The moment I wake up that morning, there's a stillness in me, a calm, deliberate energy that I haven't felt in years. It's the same quiet confidence I used to have when I was younger, when I knew every decision I made was my own. I start the preparations early. The roast goes into the oven, the vegetables are seasoned just right, and I bake an apple pie, the way Sophia always used to like it. The smell fills the entire house, warm and comforting. Everything looks the same as it always does, but this time, I know it's different. By 6 o'clock, the table is set perfectly. The good china gleams under the soft light, the candles flicker in the center, and I place fresh roses from my garden in a vase beside them. I look around and smile. This house, my house, looks more alive than ever. When the doorbell rings, I open the door with a calm I can't quite describe. Ethan stands there, holding another bottle of wine, his expression neutral but guarded. Vanessa follows, giving me a warm, cautious smile. And then there's Sophia, her phone in her hand as always, eyes darting up just long enough to say, "Hi, Grandma." "Come in, everyone," I say pleasantly. "Dinner's ready." They step inside, the same way they always do, but I can feel the shift in the air. The last time they were here, I was the one on edge. Tonight, they are. The conversation over dinner starts light. We talk about Sophia's classes, Vanessa's work, Ethan's latest project. I smile, nod, and ask polite questions. But all the while, I can sense Ethan's mind elsewhere. He keeps glancing at me, as though he's waiting for something, an opening, perhaps. Finally, as the plates are cleared, he sets down his fork. "Mom," he says slowly, "I think we need to revisit that conversation about the house." I pour myself another cup of tea. "Oh? What about it?" He leans forward, careful. "You told me you'd already made some changes. I talked to the lawyer, and they said they haven't received anything from you." "Of course they haven't," I say calmly, stirring my tea. "I didn't send it to them." Vanessa's brow furrows slightly. "Then who did you send it to?" I smile faintly. "You'll see." Sophia rolls her eyes. "Oh, Grandma, not this again. You're being so secretive. Why can't you just let Dad handle things? He's trying to help." I look at her evenly. "I know he thinks he is." She sighs, exasperated. "You're making it complicated for no reason." I set my cup down, folding my hands on the table. "Actually," I say softly, "it's quite simple." The room goes quiet. Even the ticking clock seems to pause. I rise from my chair and walk over to the sideboard. From the drawer, I take out a folder, the same one I placed there days ago. I return to the table and set it gently in the center. Ethan looks at it warily. "Something I wanted to share with you," I say. He opens the folder, and as his eyes scan the top page, the color drains from his face. Vanessa leans in to look, her hand flying to her mouth. Sophia, confused, grabs the papers and starts reading aloud. Transfer of property. Marjorie Hayes hereby grants ownership of 113 Maple Avenue to the Maplewood Children's Literacy Foundation. She stops mid-sentence, blinking. "Wait. What?" Ethan looks up, stunned. "Mom, what is this?" "It's the new deed," I reply evenly. "The house has been transferred to the Literacy Foundation downtown, effective immediately." For a moment, no one speaks. The only sound is the faint crackle of the candles. Then Sophia laughs. But it's hollow, uncertain. "You're joking, right?" "I never joke about paperwork," I say calmly. Ethan's voice rises, disbelief turning to anger. "You gave away the house? To a charity?" "To a literacy foundation," I correct gently. "They help children learn to read and write." "It seemed fitting," Vanessa whispers. "Oh my God." Under her breath, staring at the document, Sophia slams the papers down on the table. "This is insane, Grandma. You can't just do that." "Actually," I say softly, "I can." And I did. Ethan stands up, pacing, running a hand through his hair. "Why? Why would you do something like this?" I meet his gaze steadily. "Because this house was built on hard work and learning, on handwriting and words. Your father and I raised you here, taught you everything we could. And lately, all I've heard is how my writing, my way of doing things, is outdated. So I decided to leave this home to a place where writing and learning still means something." Sophia looks at me, her expression somewhere between shock and hurt. "You gave it away because of me?" "No," I say. "Not because of you, because of what I hope you'll learn from it." Ethan opens his mouth to argue, but I lift a hand to stop him. "This isn't punishment," I say. "It's legacy. Every letter I've written, every note, every recipe card, this house is built on words. It deserves to live on in the hands of people who understand their value." The silence that follows is thick, heavy. Sophia's eyes glisten, though she tries to hide it. Ethan looks defeated, confused, angry all at once. Vanessa looks at me quietly, and for the first time, I see something like admiration in her eyes. I pour myself another cup of tea and take a slow sip, letting them sit with the truth. "This is my handwriting, my decision, my life," I say finally. "And I've written the ending exactly as I wanted it," Sophia whispers. Almost to herself. "You really did it," I nod. I did. For the first time that evening, I feel the weight of every signature I've ever written, the letters that built my marriage, the bills that paid for this home, the notes that held my heart. Each one led here, to this moment. I glance at Sophia, her wide eyes fixed on the papers she once mocked me for signing. Sophia's face turns pale as she realizes the handwriting she mocked just signed away everything she expected to inherit. Silence fills the room as everyone stares at me in disbelief. The kind of silence that feels thick and electric, like the air before a storm breaks. No one moves. The folder lies open on the table, the deed visible, my name, my signature, my choice. For a moment I simply watch them, three faces frozen in different shades of shock. Ethan's pale with anger, Sophia's pale with confusion, and Vanessa's pale with realization. Sophia's the first to speak. Her voice trembles, somewhere between outrage and hurt. "You can't actually mean this, Grandma. You can't just give away our family home to some charity." I meet her eyes calmly. "It's my family home, Sophia. And yes, I can." Ethan takes a sharp breath, trying to steady himself. "Mom, do you realize what you've done? This isn't just about a house, it's about your future, about security. That foundation can't take care of you. I've already ensured I'm taken care of," I say, my tone even. "My finances are in order. My medical care, my savings, all accounted for. What I've given away isn't my safety, it's my legacy." He slams his palm lightly against the table, not in rage, but disbelief. "Legacy? Mom, you've given up everything Dad worked for. Your father worked for this house." I correct him softly. "But he also worked for meaning. He taught me that what we leave behind should have purpose. He would have approved. For a moment, Ethan looks like he wants to argue, but the words die in his throat. Maybe it's the quiet certainty in my voice, or maybe, deep down, he knows I'm right. Sophia, however, isn't ready to let go. She crosses her arms tightly, her jaw set. You did this just to spite us. Because I made one little joke about your handwriting. That's ridiculous. I look at her with a mix of sadness and compassion. It wasn't just a joke, Sophia. It was what it represented. Disrespect. Dismissal. You laughed at something that has been a part of me all my life. My handwriting isn't just ink, it's a record of everything I've lived. She shifts uncomfortably but doesn't respond. The flickering candlelight dances across her face, softening her defiance just a little. Vanessa finally speaks, her voice gentle but clear. Marjorie, I think it's beautiful, what you've done. I didn't expect this, but I understand why. You're giving something bigger than a house. Ethan shoots her a look, but she doesn't back down. She's right, she says. You always talked about teaching, about preserving the written word. Maybe this is what you were meant to do. The tension in the air wavers. Ethan exhales and sinks into his chair, rubbing his temples. I thought I was protecting you, he murmurs. I know, I reply softly. You thought you were doing the right thing. But sometimes, protecting someone means letting them make their own decisions, even if you don't agree with them. He looks up at me, weary. You've changed, Mom. I smile faintly. Maybe. Or maybe I've just remembered who I was before everyone decided I was too old to matter. Sophia's voice breaks through again, smaller this time. But you really think giving away the house will teach me something? Yes, I say. I do. Because someday, you'll understand that value isn't in possessions, it's in what they stand for. This house was built by two people who believed in words, in stories, in the beauty of communication. Now, it'll stand for that again. For generations of children who'll learn to read, write, and dream within its walls. She looks down at the papers again, her lip trembling just slightly. You're really not going to change your mind? No, I say firmly. This decision is final. The fire crackles softly in the background. Ethan leans back in his chair, his anger spent, replaced by something quieter, perhaps respect, perhaps resignation. Vanessa reaches for his hand, squeezing it gently. Sophia just sits there, staring at my signature. I can see the storm of thoughts behind her eyes, confusion, anger, guilt. But beneath it all, I think I catch a flicker of something else. Understanding, maybe. I take a slow sip of tea, letting the moment breathe. You know, I say, my voice calm. When you laughed at my handwriting that day, it hurt more than you could have known. But it also reminded me that what we take for granted often holds the most power. That pen you mocked? It signed a piece of history tonight. Sophia's shoulders slump. I'm sorry, she whispers. I didn't mean. I know you didn't. I interrupt gently. You were young, careless. We all are, once. But maybe now you'll remember that words and the way we write them can change lives. For a moment, her eyes glisten. I don't deserve this lesson. Maybe not, I say softly. But it's yours all the same. The clock ticks on the wall, marking the end of an era I hadn't realized was still waiting to close. The house feels different now, not lighter, not emptier, but fulfilled. Like it's been waiting for this final act of ownership to mean something again. Ethan finally stands, his movements slow and deliberate. You've made up your mind, he says, more to himself than to me. I have, I reply. He nods once. Then I suppose there's nothing left to argue about. Vanessa squeezes my shoulder gently as they leave, whispering, You did the right thing. When the door closes behind them, the silence that follows feels peaceful this time. I walk over to the table and look down at the folder one last time. My signature gleams faintly in the candlelight, strong, deliberate, unwavering. I reach out, tracing the familiar loops of my name with a trembling fingertip. It feels like closing a circle that's been open for too long. And for the first time, I see true remorse in Sophia's eyes. Weeks later, Sophia visits me alone, carrying an envelope. I hear her car before I see her, slow, hesitant, as if she's not sure she should even be here. The sky outside is a soft gray, the kind that makes the world feel muted and thoughtful. I've been sitting by the window with a book, the same way I have most mornings since that dinner. When I hear her gentle knock, I already know who it is. I open the door to find her standing there, hands clasped in front of her. She looks smaller somehow, not physically, but in spirit. Gone is the confident, smug girl who once laughed at my handwriting. In her place stands a young woman whose eyes carry a weight of humility. "Hi, Grandma," she says quietly. "Hello, dear," I reply, stepping aside. "Come in, I was just making tea." She follows me into the kitchen, glancing around as if seeing the house for the first time. The air smells faintly of cinnamon and paper, the comforting blend that always lingers here. She sits at the table without being asked, setting the envelope in front of her. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The kettle hums softly on the stove. "Finally," she says, "I owe you an apology." I pour the water over the tea leaves and sit across from her. "For what, Sophia?" "For everything," she says simply. "For the way I talked to you. For making fun of you. For not understanding what this house meant to you. And what your handwriting meant." Her voice trembles, but she doesn't look away. It's the first time I've seen her speak without trying to sound clever. I take a slow sip of tea before answering. "We all make mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is whether we learn from them." She nods, her fingers brushing the edge of the envelope nervously. "That's why I came. I wanted to show you something." She slides the envelope toward me. My name is written across it in blue ink, uneven. A little shaky but unmistakably cursive. The loops are wide, the letters slanting slightly forward. My breath catches. "I've been practicing," she says quickly, almost embarrassed. "Every night for the past few weeks. I even signed up to volunteer at the foundation, the literacy one you donated the house to. I help the kids with their handwriting classes." I open the envelope carefully. Inside is a single sheet of lined paper, slightly wrinkled from handling. At the top, in her careful new handwriting, it reads, "Dear Grandma, I finally understand. Handwriting isn't about being perfect, it's about patience, pride, and presence. You taught me that. I'm sorry for forgetting where I came from, and I'm proud of what you've done. Love always, Sophia." The words blur for a moment as tears well in my eyes. I look up at her, and she looks terrified, like she's waiting for a verdict. "It's beautiful," I whisper. "Truly beautiful." She exhales shakily, relief washing over her face. "It's not as good as yours," she says softly. I smile. "It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be yours." She smiles back, tentative but genuine. There's warmth between us again, the kind I thought might be gone forever. After a few moments, she says, "The kids at the foundation, they remind me of me. Impatient, restless. But when they write, they slow down. It's like watching them breathe for the first time. It made me realize why you love it so much." "That's the magic of it," I say. "Writing by hand connects you to yourself, to your thoughts. It's something no screen can replace." Sophia nods slowly. "I get it now. I really do." She glances around the kitchen again, her gaze lingering on the notepad beside me, filled with my daily practice lines. "You're still writing every day, huh?" I chuckle. "Old habits die hard. Besides, it keeps me steady." She reaches out, hesitating before taking my hand. Her fingers are warm against mine. "I'm proud of you, Grandma. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say that." I squeeze her hand gently. "And I'm proud of you too, Sophia. You grew from this. That's what matters." We sit like that for a while, 2 generations linked not just by blood, but by ink and understanding. I show her some of my old letters from her grandfather, the ones I've kept tucked away for decades. She reads them aloud softly, smiling at his corny jokes and affectionate words. "Your grandfather used to say handwriting is the soul made visible," I tell her. Sophia nods thoughtfully. "Then you've shown me yours, Grandma, and I want to make sure I never lose mine again." Her words warm me more than the tea ever could. I realize, sitting there across from her, that my plan was never about revenge. It was about remembrance, about ensuring she saw the beauty in the things we too easily discard. When she leaves that afternoon, she hugs me tighter than she ever has before. "I'll come by next week," she says. "Maybe you can show me some of those old cursive tricks?" "I'd like that," I reply, smiling. "Bring your pen." As the door closes behind her, I look down at the letter she left. The ink glows faintly in the afternoon light, each imperfect loop more meaningful than perfection ever could be. I trace her signature at the bottom, confident, bold, unmistakably hers, and feel my heart swell. As our pens move in sync, I realize the lesson finally took root. Months later, the foundation hosts a small ceremony to honor my donation. The invitation arrived weeks ago, written in elegant script that made my heart swell with quiet pride. The Maplewood Children's Literacy Foundation was finally ready to reopen its new branch, the one that now stood where my house once did. I'd seen the renovations during the early stages, but this would be my first time seeing the finished result. As I step out of the taxi, the cool spring air greets me with the scent of fresh paint and blooming lilacs. The building gleams under the sunlight, its red brick polished, the white trim freshly painted. Yet beneath its newness, I recognize the soul of my old home. The same porch columns Henry painted by hand, the same bay window where I used to read. They'd kept the bones of it intact, transforming my memories into something that could nurture others. Inside, the sound of children's laughter fills the halls. The once quiet rooms now echo with energy, tiny voices reading aloud. The scratching of pencils against paper, the hum of learning. The walls are lined with artwork, pages of colorful handwriting exercises, framed letters from students thanking their tutors. My throat tightens as I take it all in. Sophia walks beside me, her arm linked through mine. She's been volunteering here twice a week since that day in my kitchen. Her posture has changed, no longer defensive or dismissive. There's humility in her, but also pride. She greets the staff by name, smiles at the children, and introduces me to everyone as if I'm someone important. "Grandma," she says softly, "they want you to speak today. Just a few words." I blink in surprise. "Me? Oh, I don't know if I—" She squeezes my hand gently. "Please, they'd love it. I'd love it." A woman in a navy dress, Lydia, the foundation's director, approaches with a warm smile. "Mrs. Hayes, we can't thank you enough. Your generosity has given us a space where kids can fall in love with reading and writing. We wanted to dedicate a plaque in your honor." My heart thuds softly as she gestures toward the front of the room. On the wall, surrounded by bright drawings made by the children, hangs a bronze plaque. I walk closer, my cane tapping lightly against the floor. The engraved letters gleam under the light. The Hayes Literacy Hall, dedicated in gratitude to Marjorie Hayes, whose love for the written word continues to inspire new voices. And beneath that, in smaller cursive script, my own signature copied exactly from the deed I signed months ago. My handwriting, immortalized in metal. The sight steals my breath for a moment. My hand trembles, but not from weakness, from emotion. That once mocked shaky script now rests in permanence, a testament to something unbreakable. Sophia stands beside me, her eyes glistening. "It's beautiful, Grandma," she whispers. I nod slowly. It's everything I hoped it would be. When it's time for me to speak, I stand at the front of the room, holding the microphone with both hands. The audience, children, parents, volunteers, falls silent. My voice trembles slightly at first, but it steadies as I begin. "Thank you," I say. "This house has been my life for over 40 years. It held my laughter, my sorrow, my love. And now, it holds something even greater, hope." I glance at the children in the front row, their faces bright with curiosity. "When I was your age, my teachers told me handwriting was more than pen on paper. It was a way to connect the heart and the mind. It's how we remember, how we dream, how we leave our mark." Sophia smiles at me from the crowd, her eyes shining. I continue, my voice growing stronger. "This building once belonged to my family. But now, it belongs to you. Every letter you write, every story you create, it becomes part of this place's heartbeat. I gave this home away not to lose something, but to make sure what mattered inside it lived on." The room is quiet for a moment, and then applause fills the air. Not the loud, empty kind, but the warm, genuine kind that feels like a hug. I smile, blinking back tears, as Lydia takes the microphone and says, "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. You've reminded us all that even the simplest acts, a written word, a practiced letter, can change the world." After the ceremony, I wander through the rooms, taking it all in. The kitchen has become a small reading nook, filled with shelves and soft chairs. My old study is now a classroom lined with tiny desks. The wooden floors gleam like they used to after I'd polished them on Sundays. In the corner of one room, I find Sophia helping a young boy write his name. His tongue sticks out in concentration as he grips the pencil tightly, forming the letters one by one. "Perfect," Sophia says, smiling. "Now try it again. Just like that." She glances up and catches me watching. For a moment, we share a look understanding, unspoken love, and pride all rolled into one. When we leave the foundation, she helps me down the steps, her hand steady beneath mine. The late afternoon sun glows gold across the brick facade. We stop for a moment at the plaque near the entrance. My signature catches the light, shining softly. "Do you know what Grandpa used to tell me?" I say quietly. "That every life signs its name somewhere. It might not always be in ink, it could be in love, in kindness, in what we build for others. But the important thing is to sign it well." Sophia nods, her expression gentle. "And you did, Grandma. You really did." I smile, the corners of my eyes crinkling. "Now it's your turn." As we walk toward the car, laughter and the sound of pencils scratching fill the air behind us. The world feels full alive with the kind of legacy you can't measure in money or walls. It's measured in meaning, in words that outlive you. I glance back once, more at the building, my heart swelling with gratitude. My name will fade someday. My ink will dry, but what it stood for will remain. Because sometimes the things we're mocked for are the very things that define who we truly are.